Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day. And wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world, thank you as always for all of your support. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much for engaging with our content. And I would absolutely love to thank our sponsors as well, Book Creator, EduAid, and Peelback Education. Thank you so much for believing in our mission and allowing us to bring these amazing conversations into our space so we can continue to grow professionally and personally as well. And I am excited to welcome back a fantastic guest who I've had before here on the show, probably about a year ago or so. But I'm excited to bring him back, and that is Dr. Mark Hobson. Dr. Hobson, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic, Dr. Fonz. Now 1 year later, I'm able to also recognize your doctorate. Very proud of your work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hobson. And I might add, now you are tied with your son, Dr. Luke Hobson, for being a two-time guest also as well. So I
Mm,
want to definitely give a big shout out to Dr. Luke Hobson, who is doing some amazing work in the ID space, instructional design space. So I'm excited to have you also here. And now you're both two-time guests. So and I believe you are actually my very first father and son guest as well. So that is also something to be happy about. And for myself, it's just a great experience to be able to, share and amplify your voices and the work that you guys are doing.
for sure. I was thrilled as a parent when my
Yes.
son decided that he wanted to choose academe and go for his doctorate. And as we know, he's working at MIT and doing all things AI and also a college professor. So we could do a show just on Luke. But he is definitely Dr. Hobson 2.0 is a definite better addition, I will say. So uh, anyway,
Oh,
but thank you so much for
yes, of
inviting me.
course. Yes, of course, always a pleasure. So, Dr. Hobson, for our audience members who are joining us today, and maybe they haven't caught the show from a year ago, but we'll make sure we link that too as well so they can revisit that show. Can
Thank
you
you.
give us a little brief introduction and what your context is within
Sure.
the education space?
Absolutely. Um, I started off in my career as an educator. Got my teaching certifications and then got my principal certification. And I was in secondary education, left that, went into business, spent almost 20 years in business administration, then got my PhD in business administration. And after that, as I was teaching college at Southern New Hampshire University in the business department, I became fascinated, Fonz, by how my students were learning and thinking to myself, what's going on? Right. I mean, if I was a coach and we were working on football plays and drills, I would be thinking about their muscles, about their movements, about how their flexibility. And I thought to myself, I need to pay more attention to how people learn, to how their brains are functioning, to how they're reacting to me, responding to the material. How well are they writing and being able to put the context together and apply it to their own lives? So I went back to school and I went to Northeastern and then to Johns Hopkins University. More information about how the intersection of mind, brain, and teaching work together. So I retired from Southern New Hampshire University 2 years ago, I believe, and I have been teaching part time at the community college level. And we've physically moved to be closer to Luke and my new baby granddaughter. And I love teaching at Gray Bay Community College. Such a great place, Fonz, to work with freshmen and sophomores. Wow, such a trip. And still continuing to do research and writing in all things neuroscience and, of course, AI now in terms of the emulation of AI tools on the human brain.
Excellent. Well, that is definitely a great background and just something that is so interesting because oftentimes I think, and as educators, I know that many times in our preparation, we don't go that deep as far as that connection that is made. And as you know, Dr. Hobson, we've seen it all over. I mean, it's been since 2022. We're
Yes.
2026 now. It's going almost on 4 years since we've seen the introduction of AI, thanks to ChatGPT. Of course, you've got Claude, you've got Copilot, you've got so many platforms that are out there. And now you've got teacher facing platforms, student facing platforms. So oftentimes the big question is and has been now, what do we do as educators? Like we don't understand what is happening. We see that students might be just simply offloading the learning and they're concerned about critical thinking being something that is already long gone because students just want to finish the work and do the work right away. And so there's a lot of concern about that, and I know it's always playing out in the news, conversations, conferences, and so on. So I want to get your take, being the experience and expertise that you have in neuroscience from 2022 as AI has been more forward facing till now. In your experience, what are some of the things that you are seeing that might be something to be concerned about? But then also, what might be some of the things that you see might be wins as
Mm.
well?
I see it mostly as a win. I am not a worrywart about how learners are using this material if they are over relying upon it. And I understand the feelings of those who do, but let's just back up for a minute. Think about this: from 2022 to now. In 2022, 4% of all businesses in the United States said, wow, this AI tool is really cool. I'm going to use this in my operations and in my manufacturing. And 4 years later, it's 35%. And the most recent survey, 90% of all businesses said they hope to be able to use AI to look at service delivery, and manufacturing, et cetera. So our learners need to know more about artificial intelligence and how it works. And so do our faculty. So my answer to your question, I hope, is that I believe faculty need to lean into AI at their, and if I may use the term, grade level. If I'm working in primary education as opposed to higher education, right? There's a whole different structure of our brains at the age of 7 than at the age of 25. So our brains are growing and they are acting differently. So it's all about age appropriate measures. And of course, at the college level, yeah, I'm concerned that high school and college students may be over relying on ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. Those are the two tools that I primarily use. And so we have tools and we have policies and we have procedures in the academe to say, hey, this is what you can do and this is what you may not do. So there's an ethics lesson in there as well, isn't there? Right? We teach students about what is appropriate behavior and what is not appropriate behavior. Did
Excellent.
I answer your question?
Yes, yes, excellent, excellent.
Okay.
That coming from you, I think what I want to do is just get those different perspectives because I know that there could be one side that is just completely anti, then there's another side that's like gun ho, let's go all the way. And then of course there's the middle, the cautious advocates, just always, making sure and just seeing, where's that middle ground between not using it and maybe over reliance. What can we do to better the situation? So it's important that we learn, and especially, from somebody who has experience in neuroscience, and also how might this affect learning in that sense. So I want to ask you because I know that you describe the relationship between neuroscience and AI as a two-way street. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I call it a learning link. I think there is a real, your term of intersect is excellent. I say there is this space where artificial intelligence and the way a human brain works and the way we should study and learn has a true intersection. May I share a very personal example recently from the good Dr. Luke Hobson? We were discussing the fact that I've got 2 books right now that I have written, but haven't been released yet. And I've been editing them and spending endless hours editing them, and also hiring some people, beta readers, to give me feedback. And Luke said, "Dad, why aren't you using ChatGPT?" And I said, "Because I hadn't thought of that, son. What a great idea." So I've been feeding information into ChatGPT, few paragraphs at a time, getting the feedback of how I could become a a better writer, a crisper writer with fewer words. What a great tool for a college student to realize, let me write this paragraph about content. Allow me to choose business administration. Let me write about entrepreneurship. Write my 2 paragraphs, and then let me feed it into ChatGPT and see how it makes my writing crisper, better. Is my point clearer? All those things happen with AI. They have those kinds of tools. Neuroscience, of course, as we know, has inspired AI, right? I mean, I asked ChatGPT to tell me what artificial intelligence is, and it said artificial intelligence is defined as the application of computer systems able to perform tasks or produce output normally requiring human intelligence, meaning that it is human intelligence that's driving artificial intelligence, right? So AI mimics our brain functions, and that's how it is able to help us and to support us. Um, AI also has something called, and I'm sure you probably heard of this, has neural networks. So creating neural networks that mimic brain neurons and synapses. And allow me to get a little nerdy. So the way that you and I learn something up here in our brains all day, every day, is that something catches our interest, and 90% of our learning goes through our eyes, and it passes through our limbic system. And our limbic system says to us, "Oh, Dr. Fons, this is of interest to you. You want to remember this." And so, boom, it does. And then if you really are going to use it again, you pass it all the way back into the occipital lobe in the back of your brain, where it becomes long-term memory. And the more you use it, it becomes something called long-term potentiation, LTP. And that's something that you can remember long after this podcast. 2 or 3 months go by and you remember, "Oh, yes, I had this guest and they spoke about this. And how does that work for me? Or how may I use that? What's in it for me?" Yeah, well, what's in it? What's this information how is it going to help me? So in the broadest concept, AI is mimicking our biological neurons, where um, neurons reach out to axons, and axons reach out to dendrites, and they make a connection. And when that connection happens, our brains actually have a spark. Wish we could see it. Wish it could really happen. But that feeling that happens is a spark, and it makes a popping sound which is fabulous. So fascinating that all this activity takes place in our brain. So that's also for our listeners, Dr. Fons. That's also called Hebbian learning, named after the scientist who uncovered it.
Excellent. Well, that's a kind of nice segue also as well to this next question, because based on what you're saying, and mimicking the learning, but I know that you mentioned also that AI can't genuinely feel emotion, but yet 90% of learning comes through that limbic system and our emotional center. So for a skeptical teacher who says AI will never replace that human connection and learning, what would you say?
I would say that a lot of AI scientists are trying to do that. And no, it's not working yet. So what happens is because, well, I said 90%. It's accurate, but 100% of our learning comes through our senses. Whether we're hearing a lecture or we're watching a video or we're listening to or we're having a really engaging conversation with one another or we're touching a model in a science class. So everything comes through hearing, taste, smell, touch, vision. And this leads to the fact that AI can't genuinely feel emotions. It can't sense, right? At least right now, it can't. There may be robotic tools in the future that might help it to sense. But here's another personal example. In one of my writings, I'm doing some fictional writing. I tend to be nerdy in my writing. Fawn's hard to believe. So I'm not very emotional at times in my writing. And so I asked ChatGPT, how should I portray this character's emotion in this particular phase? And the answer was so interesting because it basically said, well, I really can't feel, but what I can tell you is that based on the information I have, the person might feel this way or that. So this is perception. And that's what's happening in artificial intelligence is that there are simulations of emotional responses based on what AI is studying in human interactions and learning patterns, which are simulated. So, no, I don't think that uh, instructors are going to be replaced by robots anytime soon, but, or and instead of but, if, if I'm teaching 25 learners, let's say, in a in-person classroom, and I could teach 100 learners in an in-person online classroom with the help of artificial intelligence. Wouldn't I want to do that? Wouldn't I want to share the message with more learners using tools that artificial intelligence can support me with? Um, so I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think that what we're seeing is that AI is really helping us to understand how the brain hierarchically processes information, and it's trying to help us, I hope, to help learners learn. And as you, I'm sure know, in the world of medical science, AI is just changing medical science in profound ways in just the last 2 years.
Yeah. No, definitely that's something that I see. And kind of going back to what you're saying as far as the wouldn't we want to help and get more of that information out? And
Yes,
I think that's something that at the end, I think as educators, we want to share that information. We want our students to succeed. We want our students to learn. But I think it just looking back at what and just through hearing experiences, it's more of the well, we just want to make sure that they have that recall. And that's something that I hear a lot in a lot of
sure.
circles, having that recall where before, growing up, I had 20 phone numbers memorized. But then of course there's a new generation that grew up with, these devices in their hands. And, why do I need to memorize 20 phone numbers when it's already stored here and I could just say, "Hey Siri, call mom," and it's going to call mom and I don't need to have that recall. So I think kind of thinking about that in that generation, maybe it's just that fear of maybe not having that control that they once did, or that fear of before I was seen as the I guess, the owner of this information and to give it to you was that kind of like, yes, I was able to help my student by giving them this information that now they're going to learn. So now I think that's where a lot of that fear comes from too, as well. Coming in and seeing what the technology can do at such a rapid rate based on the learning. And I know you mentioned you had a little anecdote, about being able to recite the Declaration of Independence,
Oh, yes, I still
you
can.
know? Yeah, and that you still can, and I
Yeah.
think that's where I think a lot of teachers right now are just kind of facing those questions of, well, now they don't need to memorize this because they already have that answer. Now, but now, so I want to ask you, just for our teachers that might be listening,
Sure.
as far as AI, some see, of course, it hindering the learning, some see it obviously advancing the learning and making sure that students can continue to grow and learn. And we talked that, we mentioned that a little bit here. So, what exactly happens maybe like on the brain function side of things? We talked a lot about the sparks, we talked about that short term going to long term memory. So, what are
Yes.
some things that teachers might need to know as far as using those that might be currently using a student facing platform for their students to, make gains in their learning? What might be some things that might be occurring within that student's brain as far as the learning is concerned?
It's a very interesting question. Mm, the gold standard for us as instructors, and it's a we thing, right? It's a we and us thing when we talk about educators. Those of us who have been educators, who have been in the classroom, who teach others, we understand there's a fraternity here or a community. Um, and while LTP is the gold standard of what we want to try to accomplish for our learners so they learn. I'm going to talk from a college perspective. I'm teaching in a 16-week term. I want that student to remember this material long after the 4 weeks of 4 weeks of the first month. I want them to be able to remember it at the midterm and at the final, and then after the course is over, right? But there's one other thing that I would like to share with our group today is that we also want our learners to have deep learning. And AI is utilizing deep learning to understand more about how the human brain works. Deep learning is actually a subset of machine learning. And there's some real complexities with this, but the, the, the bottom line is that deep learning takes place in us when we become so engrossed in a project that we don't even realize the time that we've spent. How many teachers and students would like to say, "Wow, the 55 minutes are already gone by. The bell's ringing. It's the class is ending." So, how can we get our learners engrossed in topics and material so deep learning happens? And I would pose to you that we can use AI tools for helping students perform research so they become so engrossed in the topic that deep learning takes place. And we can try to replicate that. If I was doing a lesson plan at a high school level, I would probably use AI once or twice a week to help reinforce the learning that's taking place in my classroom, depending upon what kinds of tools I have in the classroom, of course. Do you think that helped answer your question, Fonz? Do you think
Yeah. Yeah. No,
met
no,
some
no.
of the okay.
Yeah. No, 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 that really helps out a lot, just in making sure that understanding is because I know, like, yeah, I had talked to you a little bit earlier too, is that there's that conversation and it comes up and it's here talking about too much use, too much screen time, too much use of technology, and so on. And I feel that what happens most of the time is that parents see, technology, whether it's generative AI or actually like a content specific platform, edtech seems to be just jumbled up like in one pod.
Sure.
And there is no distinction being made of, hey, this is, content specific practice, or this is like research based for project based learning and things of that sort. So I know that there are many parents that are saying, well, the students are on the screen way too much. And yes, there needs to be a distinction made of what is intentional screen time, like we talked about, and like you mentioned
Yes.
right now, where the student is really diving in deep to content and not just looking at it superficially, but at the end, they're going to create a product that demonstrates the content mastery. And at least for a teacher, that's great feedback to see, hey, this student does understand the content, or for the teacher to be able to see, hey, you know what, I'm seeing this misconception play out in several of the students. So now I can adjust my lesson or work with that small group. So it's like that
Mm.
feedback loop there also, that really helps. And the technology is just great at being able to do that. And
Yes, it is.
I go back to my days where I we would do exit tickets, and then we would have handouts, and then by the end of the day, I had a corner of my desk full of exit tickets from 3 classes, with 90 sticky notes or 90 handouts, and at the end of the day, after you're done, that just looks very ominous,
Mm.
and then how quickly are we able to give that feedback to the students so we can make those adjustments? And
Yes.
so now, with intentional use of our devices and specific platforms. I mean, there are platforms already there that are already giving the students that proper grade level feedback to be able to help them. And the teacher is able to monitor that as, a main dashboard to be able to also spot check overall what the students are doing. And I think that that is something that is fantastic. But I think on the other side of things, honestly, like, and I'm just being speaking honestly here from my experiences, I think it's also that teachers feel they're losing that control.
Mm.
And I think that's the scary part where, like I
Yeah.
mentioned to you, that as being the person in front of the room and being seen as that subject matter expert, now I can go into a platform and ask a question and then get probably maybe the exact same answer, or maybe be able to go in deeper. And I think that's where that fear kind of spawns and from a lot of educators. But at the end of the day, I feel that as an educator, my job, at least in my experience, has always been to be the guide in the learning and be
Yes.
able to make sure that the students stay on task and that they're learning, but also being able to tap into their emotional side, that
Of
part
course.
that the technology can't do, being able to read a room and being able to adjust learning for somebody that may come in and you see them maybe possibly having a bad day. I mean, those are those adjustments that you make. The
Of
learning still
course.
takes place. You're creating that environment for the students. But again, a lot of it now we're seeing a lot of that fear that comes in, from what you see on social media. And a lot of parents just need to understand that, yes, that although the student may be on a screen, it doesn't mean that it's not being intentionally used and in a way that's going to help the student continue to grow. And then, of course, there's the difference where maybe the parents are seeing that the student is at home just watching YouTube videos and maybe spending time on Minecraft, and then they just kind of bundle that up with, oh no, it's just too much screen time. But
Mm.
there is that distinction that needs to be made on that screen time, I feel. And so, yeah, I'm absolutely there with you, where the tools now can help give that immediate feedback, help the teacher and support the teacher to adjust the lessons, and maybe that they're able to go in a lot deeper than they once could, because now they don't have to just teach that superficially. Now, thanks to the tools, that deeper learning takes place where the student gets also that heightened sense of kind of dopamine, in the sense of, oh my gosh, I'm learning this and now I'm creating something with it too as well, and here's my digital learning artifact that I can share with my teacher, my classmates, with my parents, with the world, and get an authentic audience. So I think now it's just something that has been some like amazing. Now we're living in a period where now, like you mentioned, 100 students in one class, and you're able to support all of them. I
Yes.
think that's something that is fantastic. So I want to continue here. I wanted to ask you, as far as shared learning principles. We talk
Mhm.
about AI and the brain. They do share some key principles. Can you tell me or walk us through a little bit of that as far as the learning data, how the brain
Mm,
learns and maybe how AI learns and maybe where that intersection is, just to bring some clarification here to our audience?
absolutely. And I was thinking as you were just speaking about classroom lessons and takeaways, wouldn't it be great if at an age appropriate level, the listeners would work with their students to learn about what AI is? How does AI work? And if I'm a middle schooler or a high schooler or a college age learner, do they know? Do they really understand how AI works? Or do they just know how to use ChatGPT? Uh, so I think it's important to understand how things work. And as learners and as faculty, we want to know how AI works. And thank you for your question. Um, AI and the brain share very key principles because AI is designed on the human brain. So that's the part we don't need to be afraid of it. It's designed on us, on how we think. And brains learn through senses, experience, feedback, and reinforcement. And AI learns through taking that information of those pieces and then optimizing algorithms so AI can connect with the information. And that's called something called back propagation, which is like, whew, what the heck does that mean? And it's an algorithm that trains AI networks to detect errors backwards. And this is why, Dr. Fonz, AI is improving. So AI is giving us less errors and having less hiccups when it's doing research for us because it is following something called a chain rule. And for those of us who enjoy math or don't, it's a part of calculus, and it's a fundamental theorem that is like there's a derivative of this composite function, and with AI is able to handle two functions in the same calculus process. So there's like an outer function and an inner function, and that's how AI is able to come close to the emotional perspectives that we are born with in the and nature is amazing. Her feeling system, that core of who we are, is right in the middle of our brains. It's protected deep in the middle. And so what AI does is generalize because that's what humans do. Humans, the human brain learns, I'm going to say this term and using my hands, and it's a podcast, but it learns on the edges, right? So we learn things on the edges and then we learn things deeply. And when we learn something new, the human brain grabs that attention and goes, that is new. That is different. Oh, I really like this. And that gets our attention. Well, AI is doing the same thing. So if AI learns something new, then it wants to seek out and research all of the possibilities of what that new information is for us. And personally, I find it cool. I think that's amazing because that's what the human brain does. Our brains are so highly energy efficient and adapt. It weighs less than 3 pounds. And it uses the power of a 20-watt light bulb, hence the old joke of someone who's a dim bulb. And it's made up of these white and gray cells, uh, and it's just an amazing tool, right? I mean, maybe the greatest invention in the world is the human brain. So AI and its learning principles process with this back propagation is trying to become as human as possible, or human-like in its processing of information and reporting of information and reaction of information. And the last piece on this, doctor, is if you're afraid of something, then you're going to fill in the blanks ab- about that person or that thing. You're going to be like, oh, you're going to speculate, you're going to generalize. And I would say to all of us as faculty members and learners, try not to do that. Instead, go out and learn more about it. Right? If you're worried about different parts of artificial intelligence, then go out and learn more about it. Use research tools from reputable sources to find out more. Like listening to my EdTech Life. I mean, you're trying to gather as much information for us as possible so we become more of an informed consumer. And AI is trying to do that too. It's trying to become similarly efficient as our brains are. Uh, and the human brain, by the way, has 86 billion neurons. And that is an incredibly efficient use of space. If you see our brains compared to the rest of our bodies, what a great tool we have.
Absolutely. I mean, like you mentioned, 86 billion neurons in there. And I mean, here we have that available. And I think it's just like you mentioned, doing research, going out there, looking, it's something that is important. And I feel that many times, obviously, due to social media and things being put out so
Mm.
quick, it just depends on what algorithm you're onto as well, what it is that you're
It does.
listening to,
Yes.
but I have always been a big proponent. Uh, Growing up, always hearing, be like a Berean, go do your research.
Yes.
That is what I always have done. And
Yes.
it's not like believe the very first thing. It's always let's go out and do some research and
Test
and
it.
find out, hey, both sides, both papers. What can you deduce from both of these and then find that middle ground? Do you see the pros? Do you see the cons? Do you see a middle ground? And like you mentioned, that's been my goal for these past now going on 4 years since 2022, mainly talking about AI in education and things of that sort, is just to bring more
Excellent.
information so that we can become educated consumers, like you said, and learn more about the neuroscience and learn more about actually the similarities, kind of like the that you have between, now we're talking about neuroscience, and then there's also, you've mentioned it throughout the show, kind of like the AI equivalent of neuroscience, which has been just fantastic for me to learn because I never saw it that way. I mean, like the way that I saw this, being more of that math background, is always like, yes, it's the AI will statistically predict the next work depending on the context. However, one thing that I've noticed is like the platforms are getting a lot better and the way that they are responding, where now I'm like, wow, like, there has been an increased improvement
Yes.
from 2022 till now, which
Yes.
ties to what you have been saying in this show. And I know for a lot of the users, or excuse me, a lot of the educators and listeners of this show, I am sure that even in their experience, they have been able to see not only on their own through their own practice, but even some of these teacher facing, student facing platforms, and how much better they have gotten at helping students. I mean, there are platforms out there that can easily, just with the simple use of translation tools or even re-leveling a reading from, let's say, a fifth grade level to a third grade level, just to
Yes.
provide that student support at the end. Imagine the work that you're cutting out, where when I was in the classroom and let's say that I had a new student that was coming in with a different reading level, it was like, well, now I have to grab that original writing or that PDF
Yes.
document. I have to give it to the pullout teacher. The pullout teacher needs to go and do some work on that or translate it or re-level it. And then by the time the student gets the reading, whatever it may be, I've already moved on to the next lesson, and it was so hard for them to keep up. But when you have a tool that can do immediately on the spot, and the pullout teacher no longer becomes a pullout teacher, where now they are a push teacher, where they come in
Yes.
and they're able to see, like, oh my goodness, like in real time, the student is keeping up with the rest of the class, and they can adjust the reading level without anybody knowing. And but they're still there participating, and everybody's together. And of course, as a teacher, you still offer that support. That push teacher comes in and they're offering that support as needed. But now the system is more efficient. And that's what
Mm.
you're talking about a lot, like where our brain is the efficiency that it produces based on our novelty of learning. And now we're like, okay, like this is something that is novel to me, that I want to learn more of. And then you get into it, you get into this flow state. 55 minutes later, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like I dove in that deep. Well,
Yes.
now with the tools also, now that helps the students get into that mode too, where now it's like, hey, I was able to re-level my learning, and I'm still understanding the lesson, and I am in it. And it sticks, and I think that's something that is fantastic. So I mean, just the equivalence that we're seeing between the neuroscience concepts and AI, to me today, I've learned so much, and it's just so novel. Again, even talking about the biological learning of ourselves as learners, and then what AI is doing. And I think like after this episode, the listeners will hopefully have a better picture and a greater picture and a greater sense of how similar things can be. Yes, with those slight differences, but yes, you can still remain a cautious advocate. But hopefully, this episode will help the understanding of what AI and how AI is working, and how we're working right alongside it with the neuroscience aspect of it and what occurs in our own bodies as well. So I think this is
Yes.
fantastic. This is
Well,
wonderful.
well. So we'll remind all our instructors who might be listening that we want to reinforce to our learners to read, recite, repeat, and remember. So the 4 R's are very similar to what AI does in something called spiking neural networks. So our brains and our students, if we ask them to read and then to recite and then to repeat, they will remember. And that's what's happening in the AI machine language tools. So I'm very thrilled to have been able to be with you today, and I have so much more that I can say about this topic. So invite me back again whenever you're not sick of me, and I'd love to talk more about some of the incredible energy efficient learning tools that are being developed in AI that will help our students in our culture, really, our
Yeah,
economy and humanity.
yeah,
I think AI is
absolutely.
an exciting tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, maybe, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, since I have you on here, and you definitely might have some influence, but I think it would be great to have a father-son show. So
Mm.
imagine getting both Dr. Hobsons here on the
Mm.
show and talking about precisely that topic, and
Love
seeing
it.
what are some of the tools that are out there. And
Yes.
of course, having that neuroscience behind it, and then the practical aspect from Dr. Luke 2.0, or Dr. Hobson 2.0,
Dr.
as you
Hobson
said,
2.0. Yeah.
Dr. Hobson 2.0. And I think that would be something that would be fantastic. And I think our audience will definitely reap a lot of learning from that. And so I'm just really excited. But Dr. Hobson, thank you so much for being an amazing guest and sharing your knowledge, and just helping us, our audience, helping me. Like I always tell people, this is my personal professional development that I have for
Yes.
an hour that I get to share with the world. So I thank you so much for being here and being so gracious
Well,
with your knowledge and your support of the show also as well. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. I have a new website. So if anybody wants to reach out to me and ask for more information or contact or support or help, that's as you, my life is on the teaching side. Dr. Luke Hobson's life is on the learning, science and development side, right? But I love teaching and sharing anything about teaching. So it's as simple as www.drmarkhobson.com. So if I can help anybody who is listening to this presentation, I will do so.
Perfect. Excellent. We'll make sure we link not only the last episode that you were on, but we'll make sure we pop that link also in the show notes for all our audience members to be able to click on that and get ready to just dive in and reach out to you for any questions. But Dr. Hobson, as you know, the last episode you were here, I always love to end the show with these next 3 questions. And I know,
I know.
yeah, so hopefully you're ready for those. And, I know that from a year
Not all
ago to
night.
now, a lot has changed. So let's start off with the very first question that I always ask. And as we know, every superhero has a pain point or a weakness. So we know for Superman that kryptonite was what weakened him. So I want to ask you, in the current state of education, and it can be any topic in education, whether it's higher ed or elementary or whatever it is that you feel, what would you consider to be your current edu kryptonite?
I want higher education to cost less. And what hurts me, pains me, is seeing students leave college with more debt than a house. And it just, that stops us, right, Fonz? That stops
Yes.
us from generating more deeper learners and people who are more highly educated. And I understand that degrees don't necessarily equate to learning, but come on, we all know that people with at more advanced degrees make more money and they're more successful and they have a happier life and they live longer. Don't we want that for everyone? I do. So that's it bothers me that higher ed costs so much money for our folks.
Excellent. Great answer, Dr. Hobson. I definitely agree with you on that. So, question number 2, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
It would be, I have given so much thought to this one. It would be a 3D billboard of the human brain that would change over time to allow people to see deeper into different aspects of the brain, into the different 5 areas of functions of the brain, because I feel that the more we understand about our brains, the better we're going to be as learners and as human beings. The more I know about your brain and my brain, the more I'm going to have compassion and empathy and care for you as a person, right? As another person on the planet. So brain learning is really important. And I'd love to have a 3D billboard.
Excellent. Well, you know what? I was thinking, now that they have that giant monstrosity over there in Las Vegas, that big old sphere,
Oh yeah.
imagine having that like an actual 3D brain there, and
Let's
then you're
make that
just
a
seeing,
brain.
right? The circuit, you see everything just firing off and everything. I was just thinking about that right now. I mean, that would be just a learning lesson like there for a whole day, a whole week, and just understanding the way the brain works. I mean, that's fantastic. Why just stick with the billboard? Let's just make that whole Las Vegas sphere into
Can
a
you
big
work on
brain.
that? I mean, I'll pay you to work on that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
well, if there's anybody that's listening to this episode, any educators that know anybody that works there at the Las Vegas Sphere, if we can make that happen, put us in contact with somebody and we would definitely
Yeah.
do that. That'd be great.
Be
All
awesome.
right, Dr. Hobson, my last question. All right. So my last question to you is, if you could trade places with a single person for a day, all right, who might that be and why?
I'm not saying this to sound political, but I would like to trade places with Gavin Newsom and be the governor of California. And the reason why is because I have long admired California's educational system. And I would love to be someone who could oversee what was first of all, I love to live in California. You have some nice weather, and I'm in New Hampshire, and right now it's 2 degrees. So I has a warmer weather climate on a regular basis, but also fun. Just think about that education that goes on out there, right? And the research at places like Berkeley and University of San Francisco. So that would be something that I would love to be able to help. And most of the schooling is free for residents. So, boy, I would really love to be able to help embellish what goes on in that type of environment.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful. Obviously, teacher at heart, Dr. Hobson, it really comes out, and always
Always.
wanting to help and support. And I think that's fantastic. And I think that I myself too, I would like to think that I have always been a teacher at heart and still continue to do so just because that's really why I do what I do here in the podcast, just to continue
Absolutely.
to help learn. But
It's
I agree with you, it's just learning is freedom. And I think that is just for me, it's just to be able to learn has helped so much. And so, yes, I could definitely see your heart for it. So thank you so much again, Dr. Hobson, for being an amazing guest and just sharing your knowledge. And I thank you for everything that you do. And I can't wait. Maybe we can definitely maybe you can get on the phone with
I
Dr.
will.
Hobson 2.0 and be like, hey, guess who brought up an idea, and see if we can make that happen. That would be fantastic.
I'm
But
sure we
thank you so
can.
much. Thank you for
Thank you,
everything.
doctor.
And for all our audience members, thank you so much, as always, for all of your support. Again, make sure you visit our website, myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 351 wonderful episodes where I promise you will find some knowledge nuggets that you can sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. And again, a big shout out to our sponsors, Book Creator, Eduate, and Peel Back Education. Thank you for believing in our mission. And my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techy.